Welcome back to Nutrition Connection, the show where science meets storytelling. I'm your host, Dr. Kristen Hicks-Roof, dietitian, researcher, and really lifelong advocate for the role of nutrition, health, and wellness. Each episode, I sit down with dietitians and nutrition experts all across the food and healthcare landscape, leaders whose work touches nearly every aspect of our lives. So whether you're a student, a seasoned professional, or someone simply curious about the role of nutrition, health, and wellness, this podcast is just for you. The views, thoughts, and comments on this podcast do not reflect those of my employer nor the employers of my guests. Okay, so let's go ahead and get connected. I'm really excited to bring on today's guest. She's in health tech, and I cannot wait. So we have Melissa Jaeger. She's the head of nutrition at MyFitnessPal. MyFitnessPal. Welcome to the show, Melissa.
Thank you so much for having me. So excited to chat a little bit today about the world of health tech and our love of dietetics.
Well, and we've interacted kind of over the years. I even remember when the MyFitnessPal job got posted. I was like, that is a cool job. Like, I hope one of my friends get at it. And then you got that job. So I can't wait to talk about what your career has been like and what you do now at MyFitnessPal. But before we get into that, Melissa, talk to me a little bit. Like, what got you into the field of nutrition and what inspired you to want to become a nutrition professional?
Great way to kick it off, because I find every time I meet a new dietitian, I'm always curious their why or where things unfolded. So from my perspective and kind of my background, I grew up in multiple sports, different athletic programs, and I came from a family that loved to cook and bake. And I thought that that was totally normal. I thought that people always cooked at home. We hardly ever went out to eat. I was like, oh, cooking is super fun. I love talking about it. We love trying new flavors, new foods. And the deeper I got into athletics, and especially in dance, they talked a lot about how food fueled your body and how you had better energy to perform if you were eating a more balanced diet, and how you could see the differences between on and off season. And I thought that was all super intriguing. And so I started actually in high school volunteering at a hospital. And I got to meet different healthcare professionals along the way. And so when I was deciding where I wanted to go to school, I was looking for schools that had nutrition programs and exercise science programs, because I couldn't really decide if I wanted to go more a physician's assistant route or personal trainer or dietitian. And I remember sitting down with my advisor right away, like first semester of undergrad, and saying, okay, I'm a nutrition major, exercise science minor, and they had multiple tracks for the dietetics program. And she goes, please put yourself into the dietetics track. That will give you the most options when you graduate. Even if you don't know exactly what it is that you want to do, she said, having those credentials behind your name will open doors. And that's exactly what I needed to hear, because you're sitting there going, well, do I focus more only on the research side? Do I just do a general nutrition major? Do I go more of the food science route? Like, what area do I really want to go? And she said, with your RD, you could do any of those. So
Right.
you may as well stay within the more specialized track. And here's what you do next. And so I really appreciated that reassurance and that guidance right out of the gate. And I think having that passion for really wanting to help people, wanting to do it in a way that felt authentic to myself through my love of food and nutrition and athletics was really what inspired me to stay on that focused path towards becoming a registered dietitian, and kind of kept me going through all of the lovely biochem classes and OChem classes and things that when you sign up for the DPD track, they may not advertise as much, I
Of course
found.
not. Right. Yeah, exactly. Because no one really wants to sit in those classes.
You learn
So I
so much, but I just remember getting to that and going, I don't remember them talking about all of this extra stuff that we had to do. And I think, it's a very unique career path in a sense that once you have that credential behind your name, it truly does open a lot of doors. There's dietitians doing so many cool, unique jobs. So that's why I love seeing that you've launched this podcast and getting to see what guests are coming on next, because everybody's story is so unique and special.
Yeah, there really are so many different career paths, and that is a big impetus to why I started this podcast. But I loved how you talked about this advisor because I remember as well when I was going into school and even when I was a faculty member, students would ask me, well, do I do the general nutrition track or the RD track? And I used to say, look, if you go the RD track, you do have so many more career opportunities. Even if you may not be a practicing clinician your whole life,
Yeah.
having those credentials behind your name will open up doors than a general degree. And I think even if you went on to go be a PA or went on to become, I have friends who've left dietetics and became dentists, but they're also dentists and dietitians, and so it's like the best of both worlds because every health discipline is connected to what we eat.
100%. I love how you sum that up there. And I think it's so valuable to lean on people within your school if you're an undergrad watching this, or as you're exploring kind of what you really want to do, because we don't all grow up knowing that dietitians exist.
Right. Well, and even, I mean, I've had several other guests on the podcast. It's like, even when you knew that you were interested in nutrition, you didn't even know what that major was because dietetics is not dietitian. And some people still don't know dietitian is nutrition, right? Like, there's so
Yes.
many different languages and nuance that we use in the field. So you become a dietitian, right? You go through school, you become a dietitian. What was your first job? And then how has your journey progressed into where you are today?
So I dove straight into retail dietetics. When I was going through my dietetic internship, I had the amazing opportunity to shadow a retail dietitian, and I loved it. I was absolutely remember sitting in classes at university going, okay, I do appreciate clinical. I love my clinical rotations, but I was like, I don't know that I would want to be in that one role forever or only work with one specialty. Like, I want to reach as many people as possible. And I found so many people in my clinical rotations when I was giving diet ed were asking me very specific questions about individual food products they were eating. Or they would say, well, once we discharge, I need to go grocery shopping. Can you write me a grocery list? What can you do? They were trying to ask those very pointed questions. And so I remember looking for different job opportunities. P.S. If you graduate, apply to everything and anything. Please put your name out there. You never know what is going to happen next. But ultimately, I worked for Hy-Vee grocery stores for almost 10 years. And that was my first role. And I really loved the mix of not only being able to counsel and work with clients individually, but have almost my own business that you're running because you're responsible for advertising your services, bringing in clientele, working with different food products and organizations. Um, I did a lot of media within that role. I ran a teaching garden. I did cooking classes. Essentially, you get to dabble in a lot of different areas and expose yourself to a lot of different opportunities to really create a positive experience for someone who is coming into the grocery store. And I think we have such a strong opportunity to impact and help consumers in their choices as they're building their menus for the week, as they're thinking through what they want to add to their grocery cart and how they want to cook that up at home for their families. And so I love being able to educate at the point of purchase and really help to connect those dots and say, I know that you're really interested in snack crackers. Well, let's go ahead and actually read some of the labels and compare and see what makes the most sense for you or what's on sale this week that can help to balance out this meal. And let's throw a couple ingredients together, or teaching them how quick and easy it was to cook up some of these different food items that maybe they had never thought about adding to their cart before, or they, hadn't picked up in years, but they were really excited to finally try it again because they had an idea of how to incorporate it or use it. And so I find that having that kind of unique foundation within my career really led me to where I wanted to go next, and opened a lot of doors. And a lot of that started by saying yes to things that made me really uncomfortable or I had no idea what I was doing. I'm sure you felt the same way. Like, we all start in these roles and we go, sure, we can do that, or we'll figure it out. And that's kind of what leads you to push outside of your comfort zone and say, you know what, yes, I can do this and I can figure out how I can engage with consumers. And yes, I can go do media, and here's how I'm going to do it. And, being open to those opportunities as they come through, because if I had said no to everything that scared me, I don't know where I'd be today.
Well, I think you bring up such a good point is like, even when you're in these roles, what like a niche role in dietetics, even in my job, and I know your current job, what you're going to get into, every day you may be faced with an opportunity of, hey, can you do this? Like, do you know how to do regulatory or do you know how to do some marketing? And it's like, yes. Are you going to be perfect? No, but you learn on the job. And then that's what then you build your skill sets, and that's how you can pitch your next role. And if you're super interested in retail, I do have other episodes with Stacey Bates as an earlier episode and also April Sims. So check those episodes out if you want. But so how did you make that decision though, Melissa, to go from retail into health tech? Like, what do you think there were skills were that you had and how did you make that transition?
I think from a personal level, you do know when you are ready to grow or change or take on that next challenge. So if you're sitting in a current role right now and you're going, I still really enjoy what I'm doing, but I want to know what else is out there, or I'm ready to pursue that, you can always start to look and see how job descriptions and postings align with what you've already done. I think as dietitians as a whole, some are better than others about talking about their accomplishments and what they've done. And so I encourage anybody at any point to start keeping track of your accomplishments and make sure that you have those things handy when it is time to take that leap or that next step. Um, I personally had used MyFitnessPal for years with clients in the grocery store. I mean, it had barcode scanning. You could not get easier. It would be like, Melissa, I don't want to bring in my paper log to my next visit. Or I started, counseling using telehealth. Um, and people wanted to share, things digitally or just export into a spreadsheet, and they were sending me their food log that way versus, always being right next to me. And so having that digital tool really helped them bridge the gap between visits. And it also allowed me to better see what was happening so that I could pinpoint and say, hey, you're doing a great job with this. I'm noticing that we're a little bit low on our fiber goal most days of the week. Did you notice if you were feeling hungrier that day? Here it's showing you what are some of your top sources of fiber in your diet. Here's a couple more ideas, or, what might be next for them. And so I think knowing the tools that are available to consumers in today's day and age is really critical. And so when I saw the position open at MyFitnessPal, I got really excited because it was a product I was already familiar with. So that one raises your comfort level right there, right? Um, and then as you're thinking through, I read through, and part of the job description involved media and communications, which I am so passionate about. Like if I could scream from the rooftops about nutrition all day, every day, whether that's radio, TV, podcasts, you know, articles, whatever it might be, like that is magical. And so I knew as I was looking for my next role that I wasn't willing to give that part of my passion for nutrition up. I wanted to find a role that still allowed me to communicate that and do it with that scientific lens and integrity and backing um, that I wanted to maintain throughout my career path. Whether or not I was working with consumers one-on-one anymore, I still wanted to work for an organization that really valued science, that valued my credential as an RD, and would allow me to keep communicating about nutrition on an even larger platform.
Yeah, I mean, and I think you bring up a really good example of how what you do in your role, you can leverage for your next role, right? And like, and also not only in the skills, but the passion. I mean, that's something that every time I go into a new role, people are like, gosh, you're so passionate. Like right now with pork, they're like, you're so passionate about pork. And I'm like, yeah, you really, to me, it's you have to love what you do. And if you don't love what you do, I agree with Melissa that there maybe it's time for the next step. Maybe it's time for a transition role. And maybe that's still within clinical, like you go from diabetes care to heart management or heart disease management, right? Or maybe it's outside into some of these more niche roles. I think there's opportunity that in every role you're going to gain skills and knowledge, and that's how you can use it to leverage for the next role. So what do you do in your job at MyFitnessPal? I mean, you think about this as a massive app that I remember when I was one-on-one patient counseling, which has been a hot minute.
Yeah.
A lot of people use MyFitnessPal, and I was like, wow, this is cool. But especially in today's day and age with AI and technology and every person having a phone, So I think there's so much access, better access. But what do you do in your day to day?
In my day today, I will say I am never bored. In this role, I get to work with a lot of teams cross functionally across the product. So obviously, I am not an engineer, but do I get to answer questions, help, ask them, hey, could we ever work on this? Could we build this? What does this look like? How long does it take? Yes, you get to cross communicate. Or with our product team who's always working on feature innovation, we want to make sure that we're providing scientific backing and a nutrition lens for that. So whether I'm digging into research to say, hey, if we want to do this within the product, do we have the science to back it up? Is it not quite there yet? What could we be doing next to support any health claims that we want to make within the app? And so a lot of it gets to be kind of that future thinking, brainstorming, collaboration, with our product and engineering team. But I sit on our marketing team. So a lot of my role has to do with our external communications.
Mhm.
So MyFitnessPal has been around 20 years. We're a global
That's great.
company. So this means global communication efforts. This means how are we providing quality nutrition information on the MyFitnessPal blog so that whether or not a user has the app downloaded, anybody can go access credible scientific information to help them on their nutrition journey. Or it might look like media segments to promote a new campaign or a new feature launch within the app and getting to go out and talk about how does this feature support consumers in reaching their health goals? How can they use this tool to make food logging less cumbersome and even easier and faster than before? And what does that look like? And so I always try and put on that RD hat from when I was counseling and I remember what were people asking me? What were their
Right.
pain points and their struggles? And how can this product, this health tool really support them and making it a little bit easier to understand where they are today in their diet? And then what opportunities does that open up to maybe add in more nutrients, more fuel for their body? What does that look like to them? Because we know that nutrition is unique to everyone.
Yeah.
So if we start to overgeneralize, it can become complicated, but these tools, MyFitnessPal, it provides that personalized opportunity for someone to better understand what's happening with themselves today. And I think we're really entering into a time and landscape where people are craving that personalized information. They want better access to it, better control over it. And so I find that being able to provide that insight within very short time period and then being able to have that backlog or backtrack when they do want to go share it with their registered dietitian or their physician or whomever that they're working with, they can go back and say, hey, look at all the progress that I've made,
Right.
or look at what I can do next. Because I find that having that creates a little bit more awareness within their diet and really open some doors to what does their next step in their health journey look like for them. So whether I am helping to write or review our blog articles or writing our newsletter or communicating with consumers, potential clientele, going to conferences, talking to other healthcare professionals about how they use the tool and what we could do next, I think it's a very fun, unique role. I think health tech, there is a lot to learn. Like you said, we're going through a massive, AI boom essentially, and what's happening across all sorts of different industries and how it's impacting registered dietitians in their day-to-day practice and their clients in their day-to-day practice. And so saying yes to working in health tech without having previous experience directly in health tech has allowed me to learn and grow so much. And I love learning. Maybe that's the nerdy side of me coming out, but I would get so bored if I was in a role where I wasn't constantly learning or being challenged or trying to think through what's next, because that's really fun. And I think a lot of the skills that I learned in my first role helped me to transition into this role and really allow that experience. So whether you're saying, okay, I'm in clinical now and I want to make a leap to something else, but I don't know what to do, or I've always worked in research and I'm not sure how to maybe get into product innovation or within the food industry or whatever it might be, you know, thinking back on all of the different experiences that I had as a retail dietitian and how for a long time I kept thinking, this is really hard to articulate because I've done so many different things. How do
Right.
you pinpoint what makes the biggest difference? And then you also think back to, well, what is it that you really wanted? What do you know that you're good at? What do you know you're really willing to learn, and kind of finding that combination to propel you towards your next role. But I think that health tech is a super fun industry. I hope that we continue to see more dietitians, stepping into this space and continuing to work in this area because it's an exciting, ever-changing, fast-paced industry. So you are never sitting on your heels. Um, but I really love that. And I think it provides a lot of opportunity for me to keep learning and keep pushing myself as things evolve and as technology changes.
What I'd say, if summarize what you were saying, you wear many hats, right? And especially when you are nutrition in such a cross-functional way across whether it's pharma or health tech or industry, nutrition is often not siloed per se. You're tapped into engineering, you're tapped into marketing, to communications. And that is daunting for many actually because you are doing so many things. But it also, I would say to those type A, extrovert dietitians, it's such a good way to tap into some of your passions. And I think it's cool to see your role not only on the back end, but also directly helping the everyday person who's using MyFitnessPal, which I know is a very popular app. So it's super cool to see dietitians in those roles and helping to influence and make those change. So you mentioned it briefly, but like, how does scientific evidence and data really help to inform or impact your role at MyFitnessPal?
I will say I never thought I would be reading through as much research as I am today since I was in undergrad. But as we know, the industry is constantly changing, new research is being published. And as a health tech product, we need to stay on top of industry research and claims to make sure that any health claim we would make to a consumer about using the product or evidence that we're building into the product, recommendations, goal setting that we may be making is backed in that science. So it's really important to stay on top of it. But we also have this massive food database, which I love, but we have to stay on top of it. So I get to work with other dietitians who dive into that food database each and every day and update and make sure that foods reflect accurate nutrition information. There's new products launching all the time. How are we getting those into the app? There's always something innovative that we can tackle or build in next. And all of it comes back to scientific evidence or thinking even through behavior change. So I think through how are consumers, using the app, or how would I be counseling somebody on behavior change and taking steps to navigate their health goals? And how does that weave into what the experience looks like for a consumer? What would they want to do next? What do
Mhm.
I remember feeling like we wanted to ask next, or that I would be inquiring about at their next visit? And how does that integrate with food logging and support them? So at the end of the day, science is everywhere. It is definitely interwoven into what's happening and ever changing behind the scenes when it comes to the product. But I think it's been so interesting stepping into this role at MyFitnessPal because as I go out and talk to dietitians and healthcare professionals, since we've been around for 20 years, I think people know the brand name. They usually say, oh, yeah, I've used that or I downloaded it. But some people say, I haven't checked it out in like the last 5 years, or, I haven't used it specifically. What's changed? And I'm like, if you have not opened it in the last 5 years, you're going to be shocked at what the interface looks like, at what's happening, at the new tools and features that have come out. Because even just since I have joined the team in the last year and a half, there's been tons of innovation and it's really fun to see. So as you see all of that innovation coming out, know that there's science behind it, know that there's dietitians behind it helping to push that forward and make sure that we're giving our consumers and our users the best experience possible, and all rooted in, safe scientific evidence.
When I think that's so empowering, and it's one of the things that I love. Whenever, nutrition is controversial, no matter what topic it is, there's always two sides to the coin. But what's really important is, as dietitians, especially if you're in the food industry or if you're in health tech, we need dietitians at the table in all these sectors to really put forward the best, most nutritious products, bring forward innovation that can bridge clinical nutrition with retail nutrition, right? Like a MyFitnessPal. Like, the only way nutrition gets prioritized and gets to be able to connect with the consumer is if you have dietitians and nutrition experts at the table, right? Because we know nutrition through and through, and it's a way that we can bridge the science to bridging what the consumer wants or needs. So I think it's awesome that you have this role and that you have a team of dietitians that are able to help support you, because I can only imagine, like, I'm thinking the food database, and trust me, I'm a researcher. I have dug into NHANES, all sorts of food databases, and it is daunting and exhausting because there's every product code. And even now, you look at the food industry is changing, whether that's dye free or, again, controversial topics. I don't really necessarily care your opinion, but there are new products coming. And so, how do you create this database that is always having new products, new ingredients, especially when we think about like ultra processed food? Or so it's really cool. It's awesome to see your role, and I'm so glad that you're loving what you're doing and how you're really bringing science innovation to real life. So, what you've had a great career so far, and you're so early in your career. But what is something you're most proud of, or your favorite impact that you've ever had?
Oh, it's tough to narrow down to one experience. What I find is funny is, on your phone when it pops up memories or old pictures or something that you've done, there are those personal impact stories where I remember teaching some of my first cooking classes with kiddos, and I had one little girl who came back the next day with a handmade thank you card, and she said she was so excited about food and couldn't wait to cook more at home. And then every time she and her family came in to shop, she found me, and that was for years. Like, there's those
That's amazing.
individual impacts that you can make, and hey, I made a positive impact at a point in someone's life where now I hope that they have this really positive relationship with food for the rest of their life, and they think that it's fun and it brings joy, and they want to keep exploring it. Or you have those bigger impact moments where you get to speak at a conference in front of other professionals or moderate a session and create that like engaging dynamic environment, or you hit a milestone in like the number of media segments that you've done. And now you finally are like, does that make me feel like I've done enough to like be proficient in this area? Is there a set number? Do I need to do more? Like, what's next? So I think everyone is going to have those personal goals throughout their career path and those moments that are really impactful. And I think it's so fun to be able to look back and reflect on those moments and then start thinking about what comes next and setting that next goal for myself or for yourself as you're going back through and reflecting in your career, because you don't know what's going to happen next and you don't know where you're
Oh,
going to land next. So if you had told me when I was graduating undergrad that someday I would work in health tech, I would have been like, okay, well, I didn't minor in engineering, let alone major. When I was working in retail dietetics, I was like, should I have been a business minor, or like, should I have gone back to get my MBA? Like, what should I be doing next? So I think it's important to take those like moments of pause and reflect and say, look at all the amazing, incredible things that I've gotten to do to date. And then, start setting those next goals for yourself.
it really does bring up, I have those same connection points. I remember as a corporate wellness dietitian, you just had that individual level impact that will forever be marked in my brain, that I knew that I transformed that person to have that positive relationship with food and their health, their goals, whatever. But then you're right. It's so funny because I find myself in this space very often where I'm like, here, I won an award or I was on another media segment. And I almost, in a way, don't even acknowledge or celebrate that win. I already moved to the next one. Do you ever find yourself doing that where you're like, yeah, like I presented at Fancy, that was awesome, which 10 years ago, that was like a dream come true. And now I've done that and I'm like, well, what's next? Right? Where And I do think it's good to set the next goals, but sometimes I feel like I just bump over these huge milestones that were goals when I was earlier in my career.
Oh, 100%. I think it's really easy, especially for individuals who like to stay busy, who are always kind of exploring what's next, to stop and actually reflect. And so when you had sent me this question, I was like, wait, do I talk about this? Do I talk about this? Oh, yeah. And then this happened. And so it allowed me to take that moment of self-reflection, which I really appreciated. And I think it's also important to celebrate and recognize others' accomplishments. And so I always get excited on LinkedIn when I see somebody post about an accomplishment or something that's happening for them. And so I think building that community and recognizing others' accomplishments and your own and taking a moment to celebrate before you move on to the next best thing and the next target is so important. So hopefully you
Yeah.
and I can
So
remember to pause every once in a while.
I mean, we try. Although before we got on this call, I was just saying I'm going to try and slow down, but I never slow down. I keep saying yes. So there's balance. Don't necessarily take all your tips from me. Maybe Melissa has it better. So, Melissa, what suggestions or you tips do you have for someone who's interested in this type of role? Not number one in health tech, but then number two as head of nutrition. So, kind of in a leadership role.
Great question. I think I've talked a little bit about one of my key points, but always keep track of your work. Continue to take hold and say, hey, is work offering this possible experience that would give me some more leadership skills? Is there a training or something else that I could do to get there? Because oftentimes, as you advance in your career, a lot of that role also becomes about people management, which is part of my role right now, too. So having some type of experience in people managing or precepting other dietetic interns and getting that leadership experience can be really beneficial as you look towards advancing your career, regardless of which industry you're in. So keep track of your work and seek out leadership experiences if that's something that does interest you as part of your career advancement. And honestly, continue to always network. It doesn't have to be, oh, I need to spend every single day on LinkedIn doing this, or I need to be at every single conference, because you can only be in so many places at once and you also have a life. But there is a lot of power in continuing to build and talk to people in other industries. Are you interested in a role in some other area? Do you have no idea what you want to do next, but it's not what you're doing right now? Start reaching out to people that just have interesting roles and say, hey, I am thinking about exploring my next opportunity. I'd love to know how you got into your current role, what you appreciate, because those conversations can often lead to maybe another introduction, or it can answer some of the yes, no gut check questions that you might need as you think through your career. So don't be afraid to reach out. But I will say, approach it professionally, come prepared with questions, make sure that it's you're following through or you're following up, because sometimes that initial outreach halts and then we never talk again. But it's so fun for me, because as I continue to meet more dietitians or just even people in different parts of the industry, I network a lot even with people who are not dietitians, because they work in different areas of business or leadership where I'm like, what can I learn from them? you know it doesn't have to be just networking amongst one career path or one profession. You can learn a lot from people with experience across industries in different sectors of business, and then you can translate that into what you want to learn next. So if you're interested in health tech, by all means, start looking up different roles or descriptions of jobs that are posted within that industry and kind of see if any of your skills relate, or if you know somebody or graduated from the same university with somebody, and reach out and just say that you want to have a casual conversation. You never know what doors it will open, but continue to follow up and keep those connections warm, so that when the time does come, or if there's a job opening, that your name pops into the back of their head, and that allows you to interview or potentially get that role.
I love your advice, truly. And I mean, that is part of the foundation of this podcast as well, right? Interviewing, look in and listen to some of these other episodes in sectors that maybe you're interested in or you didn't even know. Because what's interesting is, right, in Melissa's case, for example, you go from retail to health tech. And if you see a theme across all the episodes, if you're listening beyond this one, many of the dietitians and nutrition experts that I'm bringing on have not stayed in one role their whole life. Right. And so I think it's interesting that you can pivot, and it's taking the skills, building the network to be able to pick, to be able to pivot. And so I think really great advice. Connect. You will see Melissa's connection to LinkedIn in the show notes. So feel free to connect with her and have any follow ups. Because I also, Melissa, get many people reaching out to me like, hey, how did you get in this role? And I love it. But you really do need to follow through. And I know we've talked about that on another episode. You really have to follow through, because if you don't, even though we have over 110,000 dietitians in our field, we remember. So make that positive impression so that we can give a positive impression to potentially your next employer or your next connection. So, Melissa, last question. If you had a crystal ball, and you work in health tech, so this might be really interesting, what do you think is coming next in nutrition?
So as I was thinking through this question a little bit, I feel like both my retail brain and my health tech brain kicked in a little bit. Because on the one side, we're seeing a lot of shift in product development, whether that's in the makeup of the ingredients of food items or just what retailers are choosing to carry and to promote. Um, and really, as I think about working for an app that's available globally, I'm always thinking about global foods that are, important to individuals living around the world that we may not see every single day on a store shelf in the US, but it's really important for someone who is logging in another country. And, how are we as dietitians putting on that thinking hat that allows us to go, hey, these foods are really important to my consumer. I may not be as familiar with them, but who can I reach out to learn more? What can I do to learn more? How can I stay on top of, foods that are coming out that consumers may be asking about? Because back in the day, I feel like consumers would come into the store sometimes and they would find me and they would say, so I just saw this on XYZ TV show, or I just read about this in XYZ magazine. Do you have it on the shelves already? But now people are seeing this on social media. Like, it's coming at us faster.
Right.
And so being able to say, you know what, I haven't looked into that new product. I'd love to look it up and, give you my thoughts, or here's what I know is available at my store. Like, if you don't go into a grocery store to shop anymore, like, you're missing new product innovation all the time. So, like, go nerd out for a second, take a couple extra minutes and walk down some aisles that maybe you haven't walked down in years, because chances are a client is going to ask you about something in that aisle, or you're going to notice that, hey, this company released XYZ new flavor, and that's going to help you think back to another client that maybe could use this. And so having that information, that really practical application tips in the back of your pocket so that you can answer those questions about somebody saw something trending on social media and now they want to eat it at home. I mean, that is where a lot of questions are likely coming from today, because we see these flash in the pan trends or different recipes or whatever it might be coming out on social media. But we're also seeing a lot of people wanting to explore global foods and different flavors and different flavor combinations and spices, and how does that impact them. So, like, there's my retail side, like, stay on top of that market. Health tech side, guess what? AI is already here. AI is everywhere. Your clients are probably using it already, whether they're prompting ChatGPT or their company is having them use some AI software in their day-to-day jobs. So, like, they're getting more familiar and comfortable with it. So if you're an RD today who has not leveraged some type of AI search engine or tool, it's time to start playing around with it. It's not here to replace any of us. Guess what? AI still hallucinates scientific research. It's not, ready to just like overtake all of our years and years and years of study. But can it make certain parts of your job faster? How are your clients using it? Are you able to guide them through a way to safely use it? We have AI powered tools within our app that make logging much faster and easier. So if you have a client that's like, well, food journaling sounds really cumbersome, using something like a meal scan or using voice logging can make it a lot easier and a lot faster. So if you're more comfortable using that tool, and it allows them to see information about their nutrition in a way that feels authentic and easy for them to incorporate and build as a habit, then that's an awesome opportunity to kind of dip your toes in the water of AI. And we also recently partnered with ChatGPT Health. So now you can actually prompt at MyFitnessPal, can you give me a recipe that's high in protein and made in under 20 minutes? And, you can use those prompts to pull from databases and sources that have more nutrition information. So like, start thinking about AI, start asking, your clients how they're using it, or if they're using tools like MyFitnessPal that have AI powered tools and you're trying to understand how they work, use them yourself so that you feel more confident or comfortable deciding if this is best for your client, if it's going to support them in their health goals, if it's something that can support you in your work, and figure out what the best method is. Because I think at this point, we have to know what consumers and clients are doing when we're not around them. And chances are is that they're probably exploring it already. So I'd rather have them safely explore it with you.
Well, and to me, the biggest thing that I keep hearing is opportunity, opportunity for dietitians to be there. Whether you're in clinical and you're using the app, or you're on the back end and you're working with the app. Like, these are all opportunities for us to create more meaningful, scientific based recommendations and counseling, whether that's, different cultural cuisines. All that can be personalized nutrition really in one, with dietitians with nutrition expertise, but then also these AI tools and technologies to support us. So, Melissa, awesome. Can't wait to hope you enjoyed the episode, and can't wait to have the next person on the episode. So if you like the podcast, like, subscribe, follow, make sure you recommend to a friend. But the most important is listen to the next episode, because every episode I bring on dietitians and nutrition experts from all across the food and healthcare landscape. Thanks again, Melissa.
Thanks for having me.